This is Lisa, and this is my story. I was born in Puerto Rico in a town called Santurce, and that was on September 23rd, 1958. Lo que me acuerdo de mi infancia en Puerto Rico, what I remember the most, es que de donde yo soy, que es un caserío, está a varias calles, como dicen, a varios bloques, a few blocks from the Atlantic Ocean, unos bloques cerca del Océano Atlántico. And I remember when I'm the kids from the neighborhood, yo y los muchachos del vecindario, pues nos escapábamos, we always escaped to go to the beach, to spend time in the beach. Jugábamos mucho en la playa porque era cerca. Eso sí me acuerdo, fue de las mejores partes de mi inocencia, de mi niñez, y que estaba mi hermano. My brother was also part of that. I mean, we were born and raised in the same neighborhood. So that was one of the most biggest memory that I had in the back of my head, that I always think about it all the time. Una de las memorias que más me acuerda, que siempre tengo aquí, y de las que más me acuerdo, de las que más placentera ha sido. And in school, well, I'm going to mention this, and I hope that everyone that is listening and watching the video get to know that I was a very smart child. Yo era un niño, porque yo era un niño bien inteligente. Incluso en my first graduation, mi primera graduación, yo fui alto honor. Y en mi casa, pues normalmente yo soy el mayor de tres, y I'm the eldest one, the firstborn, and there were other two, they're deceased already, and another boy and another girl. Y era normal, mi niñez fue normal, pues íbamos a la escuela, hacíamos maldades. They used to beat up my mother, not my father. In my case, my mother was like the head of the household. She was the one that would provide the beat up when we misbehaved, but it was about the same of a normal childhood. ¿Verdad? Lo mismo que cualquier niñez común, you know. Yo no vengo de una familia dysfunctional. I do not come from a dysfunctional household. My father was a hardworking man, and my mother as well. And she was also taking care of the house. Iba a haber un hombre que trabajó siempre muy duro. Y en mi casa there were no drugs, there were no alcohol in my siblings, in my parents. So I had a great childhood. We were never people that engaged in trouble with the neighbors and things like that. But I had my little bit of a fight in the school, because when I was developing, I started developing as a female, even without knowing what a trans person is at that time. There was no knowledge about it. No había conocimiento de lo que era una persona transgénero todavía. Y yo tuve el problema I think it's gynecomastia. Es una situación que develop on boys que empiezan a desarrollar seno. They start developing breast, and that is normal and is treatable. In my case, it was not treatable, they went away. Se me fue solo, no hubo que tratarlo. Yo me empecé a sentir distinta, y ahora voy a hablar, I'm going to refer a ella, a la mujer transgénero que está aquí presente frente a la cámara, porque eso es lo que yo soy. Yo empecé a sentir distinta porque yo siempre tuve tendencia a las cosas que fueran. I always have that tendency to play with dolls instead of with toys, boy toys. And I like sewing. I started sewing with one of my aunts. She was almost blind, but I learned how to stitch and put little pieces of fabric. Aprendí a poner pedacitos de tela en circulito. And in Puerto Rico, en aquella época, at that time, I remember that people used to make covers with those little motitas, and they were hand stitched, and that's how I started learning sewing by hand. And I was very curious about that. Yo tenía mucha curiosidad acerca de eso y me gustó. Entonces ya después, más grandecita, como la edad yo le diría como la edad de 12, fue que empecé como a sentirme más. I'm not going to use what I believe is a metaphor that I was born in the wrong body. That to me, with all the respect, it does not make any sense. I was wrong in the body, that it might be wrong, but that I was a woman born in a man's body, to me, that's the metaphor, and it does not click. No me suena, no me resuena en mi mente que yo soy una mujer que nace en el cuerpo de un hombre. Yo lo considero una metáfora, pero esa es mi opinión personal. When I started reading and doing my own research, because I needed to, at that time there was no internet. Cuando yo te estoy hablando no había internet, eso salió, para mí el internet nació hace una hora, y figurativamente hablando, figuratively speaking, era, I based what I did on reading, and I started reading a lot. And because I needed to know certain things, I would not go listening to what others say, because every time that alguien me hablaba, yo tenía que escucharle y hacer sentido común de lo que la persona estaba diciendo, ¿me entiendes? Por eso vuelvo al principio de lo que estoy hablando. En la escuela, especialmente en la escuela elemental, yo fui un niño muy inteligente y tenía cierta curiosidad to learn from things that only elder, mature people tenían interés. Y recibió honores y todo. These are things that I don't talk about, because nowadays when you mention things like that in my community, and in my case, the other members of the community, if they're around me, si están cerca de mí cuando yo hablo de lo que yo he hecho, me miran como que, sí, claro. O sea que como, no sé por qué será, I don't understand why, it does not have credibility. So I keep it to myself to avoid making a mockery in front of others. Yo en realidad no tenía un debate interno. I did not have an internal debate or fight. Para mí, for me, it was always natural. It was like kind of natural. And I was very adamant about it, like showing it. Yo era bien así como que tenía cuidado. Not because I was afraid, or because I didn't have any knowledge. Yo no sabía que lo que yo hacía supuestamente era mal, o estaba mal, o era malo. Pero yo tenía miedo. Me daba como que miedo. Mi instinto tenía miedo de enseñar. Que quiero que sepa, by the way, I'm gonna let you know that yo era un niño muy extraño. Cuando yo jugaba béisbol, los muchachos en el bloque, in the hood, when I used to play baseball with the rest of the boys and girls from the neighborhood, I was the only boy that los muchachos agarraban el bate de esta forma. And I was the only one that would pick up the bat like, and it was something that people laugh, and I laughed, but to me that was normal. So it wasn't that it was pretending or let me do this. And the same way that the boys would run like this and I would run like, yo corría de esta manera en vez de correr como los muchachos, yo corría. Y all the neighbors laughing, hysterical. And I was like the sissy down the block. Yo era la loquita del vecindario. Siempre, since I was very, very young, since I was a child, there was something. And when the boys would dance like this, I would dance like. And it was normal. I was not copied. Yo no estaba mirando ni copiando a nadie. En mí era normal. Yo me sentía así. Yo feliz. I was very happy when the others laughed about it because I didn't know. I didn't believe. Yo no pensaba o creía que se estaban burlando de mí. Yo estaba creciendo. No había esa maldad. Y yo lo veía bello porque aparte de que they all laughed about me or with me, they will applaud, so I thought it was, I'm making a statement. Yo estoy arrastrándome aquí. Pero that was not what I would see. I thought it was cool. And I thought I was like, I'm doing something. Because a child at that time, and in those days, remember, I'm 61 years of age now. In a few more weeks, I'll be 62. So it was very, very different. Not even this close to what we and the youth of today live. Nada, never, that would never be. En casa, in my house, well, things were changing. Las cosas empezaron a cambiar. Cuando yo tenía, when I was about como 11, about 11 years of age, my mother and my father sent me to Cincinnati, Ohio, a city of Silverton, if I recall. Yeah, and at that time there was a famous baseball shortstop, Leo Cárdenas, from the Minnesota Twins. Él era el shortstop, el dinero corto de Leonardo Cárdenas, cubano, de los gemelos de Minnesota. Y yo soy mitad cubana, I'm half Cuban on my father's side. Y mi mamá pertenecía a la religión, mi papá Yoruba, que le dicen santería. Y la esposa de Leo Cárdenas, Gloria Jackson Cárdenas, African American from the Bronx, New York, era ahijada en la religión de mi mamá y de mi papá. Ella se vio envuelta en una ceremonia. She was involved in all these ceremonies that has to do with Yoruba religion, which is santería. And then she became like, ella se hizo como part of the family. So my mother wanted me to learn English, and she sent me for 2 years to Cincinnati, Ohio, in Silverton. Y viví ahí. When I was there, I left Puerto Rico on an airplane to Cincinnati with a military haircut, because I was a little boy. And when I came back, I came with this huge afro, and my father did not like it. He did not want it. Then a series of circumstances that happened in the family. My mother and my father, they had a house in what is called a suburb. En urbanización tenían una casa. I was raised in the projects. If anything, the most famous project en Puerto Rico, el caserío, que ahora son residenciales más famosos y más grandes de Puerto Rico, que se llama Luis Llorén Torres, que todos los puertorriqueños, tanto de aquí como de allá, saben lo que es Luis Llorén Torres por la historia que tiene, buena o mala, pero saben. Yo soy nacida y criada ahí. Entonces ellos, they dedicate more time in the house and less in the apartment, in the project. So yo me vi con more freedom para empezar a ser quien yo era. But what happened is that there were another trans people in the neighborhood that I knew, and some of them fuimos a la escuela. Yo fui con algunos a la escuela. Entonces yo empecé a juntarme. I started, getting together with my other trans friends from my neighborhood, and then I start dressing up as a girl and hiding from my mother. But the neighbors always saw me, and my mother found out. And my father, he was not happy, but he never said anything to me. My mother did. She didn't like the idea, and that's how my life became a turmoil from that time on. I used to go to this club called the Black Sugar, and it was walking distance from that neighborhood. And the owner of the club, Filomeno, he was a young guy. He was a young gay boy that their father, siblings, threw him on the street, lo botaron a la calle. Y mi mamá y mi papá, they had some sort of compassion because he was from the neighborhood, era del vecindario. Y cuando supieron, le hablaron y le dijeron, mira, we can give you, te podemos dar housing, te podemos dar comida, porque mientras my mother and my father work, he would be our nanny. And it happened, and then he grew up, and he started taking, at that time the hormones were starting to come, but there wasn't the black market, las hormonas de estrógeno se veían, pero eran en el mercado negro, y no era la misma calidad. It was not the same quality as nowadays. So, and he started taking hormones. He left the house, se encontró su partner, se enamoró, y he was the owner of this, él era el dueño del club called Black Sugar. So, como he was the owner, and he practically raised me. So I used to escape and go to the club, although I was a minor, aunque yo era menor, pero como él era el dueño, él decía, ven que yo, cualquier cosa, I take care of you, I cover, I'm responsible. But my mother didn't know that, neither my father. So I met this, I was 14, I met this man, and he was very cute. I think, I remember his name. completely. Yo me sé el nombre y me sé el apellido. Ya él tenía fama y yo lo vi tan lindo, yo dije, uy, he looked at me, uy. Y entonces yo me encontraba, I used to see him on weekends on the club. But I remember I used to hide to do what I was doing, dressed up as a woman from my mother and my father. Yo me escondía para hacerlo. Y un domingo, I will never forget, there was a party, a big celebration, a big birthday celebration en ese club at the Black Sugar. Y yo fui bien regia, you know, ya yo estaba como metida en la moda, me gustaba la moda. I developed going to design school later on in my life. Y tenía como que cierto sense que esto era lo que estaba de moda. Y entonces nos juntábamos y ella me decía, mi amiga Tina, que era another trans girl, ay, esto te va a quedar lindo a ti. Yo decía, pues mira, este es mío, you know, y we'll exchange clothes and shoes. That's the that I went to the celebration at the club. Y bien, muy linda, muy linda. I remember como ahora what I was wearing. I remember clarito. Y estaba mi amigo. He was my boyfriend at that time. When we got back, it was on a Sunday. So my mother had access de venir de la casa de la urbanización y con llave to come in the apartment y entrar. She could go in because she had keys. And I remember that I had a couple of drinks, although I was a minor, and I fell asleep on the bed in the bedroom, and Nestor, that was his name, Nestor, he fell asleep with his clothes on the sofa in the living room. And the problem is that I fell asleep with everything, makeup, shoes and everything, and the dress. It was a two-piece skirt, beautiful with the top, and the earrings and everything, and the shoes. And when my mother opened the door that day, she saw him on the living room and she said, if you're here with my son, he's a minor, I can have you arrested right now, so get up and get out. Si usted está aquí con el hijo mío, es menor, si no te levantas ahora, te voy a llamar a la policía para que te arresten. Pero como yo había tomado, I had a few drinks, I did not heard, yo no escuché. Y cuando ella entró al cuarto, ella, yo tenía, I had a shoe on and the other one was on the floor, estaba en el piso, levantó el zapato y me entró, me pegó con el zapato y me botó de la casa. My mother threw me out of my house. I'm going to tell you something that I don't tell many people, and I don't know why I feel that I should. And if people want to believe it or if they want to think that I'm a snob, let it be. But this is who I am. In Puerto Rico, my mother, being half Cuban, my grandmother on my father's side was in Cuba, and my father had the money at that time to get her out, but it was the hassle. Era bien difícil sacarlo de Cuba, porque abrían una visa por un pueblo, por un país, y cuando se mandaba el dinero la cerraban. So, en Cuba se quedaban con el dinero, y no eran $2 o $3, era mucho dinero en aquella época. La logramos sacar. My father made it to get her out to Mexico, Spain, and then to Mexico. So being the first one, when my grandmother, Mama Maria, came from Cuba, who was going to take care of her? So yo tuve que dejar la escuela at 8th and 9th grade, de escuela intermedia, para cuidar a mi abuela. So yo perdí escuela. My grandmother got better. She got surgery, cataracts, you know that. My father sent her to Miami with mi tía, my father's sister, Maria Antonia, God rest her soul. Incredible human being, I love her to death. Y yo tenía que volver a la escuela, I had to go back to school. What I was going to do. So, in Puerto Rico, I don't remember the name, but I think I heard that todavía sí lo hacen, I think they're still doing. You take a test similar to GED, but it's only for intermediate school. And if you pass it, you can, como decir, te brincan a la high school. So, there was another situation. I was a minor, I was only 14. So, my mother moved, my father didn't even want to be bothered. My mother moved earth. She went to the Secretary of Education, and she was on vacations. It was the summer vacations that year. So I took the test, and listen to this, I passed it with 99 points out of 100. So no high school wanted to get me because at that time, minimum by law, you had to be 15. So I have to wait almost another year to turn 15 and get to the school. So my mother fought and argued. She went to this agency, went to the other one. Finally, in Old San Juan, la Escuela Superior Valdoriotti de Castro, que today is el prison de los guardias de los municipal cops. That was a high school, and it's in la plaza de Domino Plaza, right at the entrance of Calle Luna, between Calle Luna and Calle Sol, right in the heart of the Old San Juan. The principal said, I don't know how you did this, man. I'm gonna accept this job. I could be in trouble, but I'm gonna accept this job. But when that happened, right after I started school, is when my mother threw me out of the house. So I never finished my high school. Never. The best thing that ever happened to me, my father, my dad, Mario. La relación entre mi papá y yo fue siempre porque this is what he always saw what others did not want to see, like my mother. And he'll say, when my mother reprimanded me, she didn't reprimand me, ella no me regañaba delante de él, porque él, my father, he was the type of man that he wouldn't argue. My father was my mother's first boyfriend and first husband until the day he died, believe it or not. But the people from those days were like that. You see, nowadays, well, it's a different story. And after that, she got other husbands, but it took a long time. So, my father veía lo que mi mamá no quería ver. Él veía que yo era inteligente, él veía que I was very intelligent, que I was very good at school, que I was educated, because I come from a house where everywhere we went when we were kids, we'll say, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, con su permiso. And those things, even today, you can hear when I say buenas tardes, con permiso, mira, because that was in top of me. And if I wouldn't do it, I would get beat up. But it was bad when I get beat up. So, si no lo hacía, me pegaba. So, me aprendí. He used to say to my mother, if I ever catch you calling him faggot, si yo te oigo diciéndole marica, vamos a tener un problema. Yo nunca he tenido problemas contigo. I never had any problems with you, Carmen. You know what? I don't want you to call him faggot, because if he's the one that is not normal, why is that the others come from school with horrible grades? They're always in trouble. They're always giving you a hard time. Y this one that is not the normal one, viene con honores, viene con buenos grados, tiene buena educación, no se mete con la gente. So don't ever, porque one day she's reprimanding me. And my father was listening. She said, esta jodida marica que va a ser el pato. My father went hysterical. So he always covered for me. If you look at my extremities, I'm very small. I don't have long legs. My feet is not big. My hands are not. So imagine at 14, when you start developing, taking hormone, you look more like a little girl. At that time, now I look like an old witch. But I really don't care. I live my life. I could die tomorrow and I'll be happy. So, mi relación con mi papá fue excelente hasta el día que murió. Y I have the opportunity to be there when he passed. Mi hermano, my brother, the one behind me, el segundo, él estuvo en Vietnam y él vino con problemas mentales. Y él se suicidó, he committed suicide, se metió un tiro con un 38 en el corazón. Y dejó 3 niñas y un niño huérfano y la esposa viuda. At that time I was living in New York y no tenían familiar ninguno que pudiera hacerse cargo. So, la abuela por parte de madre, the mother the grandmother of the kids on the mother's side, she went to court and they reached me, porque ya yo estaba adult. Y me dicen, they asked me if they'll pay for everything, will I take them to Puerto Rico so they can stay with the grandparents on my side, de mi hermano. Y yo dije que sí, they gave it to me, and I took them to Puerto Rico. The second week after I'm there, my father went to have our surgery. It was on a Wednesday, and it was Wednesday, March 13, 1983. 3. And he went to surgery, and it took all day. He had open heart surgery. And I remember I got up very early with all the kids, and because they were my 3 nieces and nephew, and then my brother and my sister and myself. And I remember I said, let's do a teamwork, and they love to do that with me, my children. I practically raised them all. And we start cleaning the whole house with a broom and throwing water and soap and cleaning the whole house. And I remember I make a chicken soup, huge cordon with chicken soup with all pieces. Y papa, y yautía, all these Puerto vegetables and corn. And like around 11:30 at night, my mother came. I waited. I put them to sleep. I waited, and my mother came from the hospital to say, your father is fine. But I had a dream that night. I had an omen. Yo tuve un sueño, yo sabía. So when I get up that next morning, my mother is reading, sitting in the living room, and I got close to her when I got up, and I said, Mami, I dreamed this and y soñé esto y esto y esto. My mother started crying. She said, tu papá se murió. And I said, Mami, what are you talking about? Me dijo, tu papá se murió. And the phone ring right there, believe it or not. Uy, give me chills just to remember. El teléfono sonó ahí mismo. Me dijo, I don't want to answer the phone. You answer the phone. I know it has to do with your father. Your father is dead. Your father is dead. Your father is dead. I dije, Mami, calm down. And when I pick up the phone, nos dijeron, you have to come to the hospital. Yo nunca lo pude llorar. Yo no podía desbaratarme porque yo soy el mayor. Entonces, se hizo bien difícil. Se hizo tan feo y tan negro. Porque yo traje de Nueva York 4 muchachos que vieron a su papá matarse. Ellos vieron. Y esos niños vinieron con problemas ya. Entonces, en mi casa quedan otros 4. Pero ya la otra hermana mía estaba ya mayor con sus hijos. Y yo no lo pude llorar. Yo no tuve tiempo. Yo tuve que hacer los arreglos de la funeraria. Y yo tuve que empezar a hacer este papel que no era mío. Pero yo tenía que hacer. Yo tenía eso como una responsabilidad. Y yo no pude llorar a mi papá. Yo tuve que enterrarlo y yo no lo pude llorar. Porque yo lo que veía era, yo decía, con todo lo que estaba pasando, yo acababa de romper una relación en Nueva York. No hacía ni un mes. Ya yo vengo con ese equipaje. I come with this package already because I just broke a relationship with a person that I believed that loved me, and I knew that I loved that person. But it wasn't like that at the end. It happens, it's coming. So I said, okay, I have to deal with this any which way I can. And llego a Puerto Rico, mi papá se opera, traigo a mis sobrinos que se mataron, mi papá se mató. O sea que fueron tantas cosas, una encima de la otra y tan grande que yo lo que decía, I can't crumble, porque if I crumble, ¿qué va a pasar? The day of the funeral, the day que we were supposed to take him, we took him to the cemetery. My sister, out of the oldest girl, she fainted right in front of the chapel, and nobody wanted to grab her. So I have to. In the cemetery, my mother went crazy, went insane. So yo no podía tomarme el privilege de llorar a mi papá, que se lo merecía, more than anybody. Yo no pude. I know that all of us have seen situations and cases with family that are disastrous and what have you, pero yo no me lo merecía. Yo no me lo merecía. Y así, tuve que empezar a bregar con la vida. Porque yo sabía, for all that I had done and I read, and I knew this is not going to be easy. And through all these years and all these decades that I've been transitioning, I'm doing a transition. O sea, I have the situation, yo tengo mi vida en Nueva York. I only came to Puerto Rico to bring the kids, and I'll stay there for 2 to 3 weeks so they get used to their grandparents, because they never met their grandparents before. Nunca habían conocido a los abuelos por parte de padre. ¿Qué yo hago? Mi mamá me dice, no te vayas, please, y yo, porque ¿cómo yo hago? O no me están dando el seguro social de esto, el veterano de los niños. Me dijo, yo te cojo un curso, choose a course, study something, and I'm getting good money for all of us and leftover, you know. I'm getting money from that. I'm a widow, I'm getting money from that, from your father pension and your brother veteran y todo eso. And she asked me, escogí un curso, so stay with me. Yo le dije, it's my mother. Although she never loved me. My mother never loved me. Mi mamá a mí nunca me quiso. And she showed me. When she threw me out of the house, we lived on the 3rd floor in a corner like that one. And she went on the balcony and she said, I will see you come back. I will see you come back dragging your ass through the sidewalk to get back to the house. And I turned back and I said, you'll wait and you'll see. And I never went back again. Yo siempre he sido sola. And I never tuve que hacer, y estuve in bad path, caminé mal, me metí droga, hice prostitution, robaba en las tiendas que yo no he hecho, encarcelación, pero sola. Nunca le hice daño a nadie. Mi mamá nunca me quiso. If I had a situation donde mi housing, mi casa, para yo poder tener una casa, dependiera de mi mamá, yo estuviese en la calle. That bad, believe it. Y mucha gente dirá, pero esa es tu mamá porque hablas así de ella. No, yo no estoy hablando mal, yo estoy diciendo una realidad. Yo estoy diciendo una realidad que hasta el día de hoy le he vivido. Hasta until today I lived that reality. Él estaba en Miami. Él ya regresó, porque él venía de cada 2 semanas, venía un weekend, hasta que terminaba el trabajo. Pero esta vez no sé qué fue lo que pasó con el trabajo que estaban haciendo allá. He couldn't make it, vino como al mes y medio. He came back like a Montana house. When he found out que yo no estaba viviendo en la casa, se enfermó. From that day, he got sick until the day he died de corazón. Because when he met my mother, he was 22 years older than my mother. And I took 2 shirts and 2 pants and my books, and I put them in a pillowcase, and yo agarré la almohada, la funda, caminé por el caserío y fui a donde la comadre Sista, nunca me olvidaré de eso, que Dios la tenga en la gloria. Le dije, comadre Sista, my mother threw me out of the house. Me dijo, Toñito, which was my nickname because my real name is Jose Antonio, and I'm not afraid to say this, you know. Mi nombre de my birth given name is Jose Antonio Cruz Hernández. Y me decían Toñito, por Antonio. Toñito, no te puedo traer aquí porque voy a tener problemas. I'm going to have problems with your mother. You know, I don't know what's going on. So I went to school crying. I cried. I took the bus because I still have the $1.50 to take the bus at that time. Que tú ibas a la escuela y venía y te daba para lunch y todo. $1.50. Imagine, I'm from those days. Those were the days. Y fui a la escuela. En la escuela, 2 blocks up that school by Dorothy de Castro High School, there was a Cuban designer, Chaviano, and he was famous for his wedding gowns, por los vestidos de novia. And there was a transgender there que estudiaba ahí, se llamaba Tito, le decían Tina. So at lunchtime, como la high school estaba en un hill, en una cima, la escuela estaba más arriba. So at lunchtime, yo me separaba en la esquina de la cima y yo veía a Tina come down the block and we'll gather y nos juntábamos para el lunch. Y después cada cual, she will go back to her school and I'll go back to my high school. Y la estoy esperando y cuando ella me ve, me dice, nena, how you doing? Le dije, Tina, mami me botó de casa. Me dijo, what? Me dijo, mami me botó de casa, Tina. Me dijo, pero ¿qué? What happened? And I explained because she found this guy on the sofa. I was dressed up and she threw me out and all that. Me dijo, don't worry. When the school is over today, when it's finished, wait for me here. I got money. You got money? I said, I left. And that human being took me with her to her house, spoke to her mother, and they let me stay. First, I didn't look for my father because I didn't know when he was coming. I'm not in the house anymore, so how will I know? Entonces, I don't know what his reaction is going to be. Yo no sé cuál va a ser su reacción cuando él vea que yo no estoy ahí. And nevertheless, for the reasons que me encontraron, the way my mother found me, in drag, in bed, and then this man in the living room. So, cuando él regresó, él me buscó. Él me buscó. My father was very difficult to see him cry. I don't remember seeing him crying, never. I never saw my father crying, never, never. Y él me dice, ¿qué ando buscando? So, I'm assuming that he already knew. Ya él sabía lo que había pasado. Claro, tiene que ser, mi mamá le tiene que haber contado. Me dijo, well, you're not going to be living there anymore, but I found a place for you. So he found a guest house. They used to rent rooms for $25 to $20 a week. Disculpa, pero esto es complicado. Me consiguió un lugar, 20 pesos, and I started working in Puerto Rico. At that time, there was a female impersonator show called El Cotorrito, the Little Parrot. And I'm going to tell you briefly the story of the Little Parrot, porque en Puerto Rico, there was a composer, un compositor, Johnny Rodríguez, y él componía, he used to compose the jingles of the Partido Popular Democrático. They would not pay him, pero every year la alcaldesa de Mayor de Puerto Rico, Felisa Rincón de Gautier, le mandaba the license to have a female impersonator show, and he became very famous in Puerto Rico, el famoso Cotorrito. Estoy en los ensayos, me invitan y yo me senté así a ver los ensayos y una de las del cast falta, no llega. Y tenían que ensayar porque era miércoles, I would never forget, it was on a Wednesday, y él se filmaba jueves y lo daban el sábado en televisión, porque lo editaban and all that, so they'll put it together. Guess when? Una de las que está, que me invita, dice, mira Johnny, esta baila. Al director del show, Johnny Rodríguez, digo, famous composer in Puerto Rico, he passed away years ago, del trío San Juan. Y Johnny dijo, pero what does she dance? ¿Salsa y merengue? Ella dijo, no, yeah, she take ballet and he said, come here. And he looked at me and he said, you're a minor. And I said, yes. Me dijo, he said to me, te voy a poner esta música y tú me la vas a bailar como tú la sientas. So, él puso la música de afro y tucutum, 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 y allá la toñita se volvió loca y fuápata. So, él para la música porque era real to real. Mira si te estoy hablando de years ago. Y dice, se puede curse a little bit, carajo, esto es lo que yo necesitaba. Mira, eso es una bailarina de verdad. Ustedes no hay. Yo digo, ay, no, espérate. Que después vienen las otras and they beat the shit out of me because el viejo Ok. They hired me, pero tuve que llamar a papi. Hicimos una carta, la llevamos a un abogado y me la legalizaron. Un permiso. Ese fue mi primer trabajo. Yo tenía ya 15 años de edad. En New York, ya yo tenía 18 años, conocí a un hombre mayor. I met this man. Y él le gustaba ver el show. He used to date one of the girls from the show, that she was retired. Y the girls from the show, the cast, there were 16 of us, malísimas todas aquellas perras, no queda ni una viva, una nada más. Y yo, me decían, nena, ese hombre, the way he looked at you, yo, what you talking about? Porque no estaba, you know. Nena, ese hombre, mira cómo te mira. Y era un hombre, you know, era un hombre. Yo tenía 18, él tenía 34. Un día, una de las del show que lo conocía me lo presentó. Le dijo, mira, para que me des un ride y después te vas con ella a dar una vuelta por ahí. Yo dije, ok. Y resultó ser que di la vuelta, me llevó a Central Park, and that was the first time I saw Central Park in my life. Y después vinimos para aquí, para Chicago, y estuvimos un mes y medio, y yo le escribía y le hablaba. Y entre las cartas decidimos, nos juntamos a ver qué pasa. Y le dije, está bien, yo soy una señora ya, yo no tengo nada que perder. Y vino buena amiga, yo estaba mayor, 18. Y estuve con ese hombre for about 10 years almost. It was the love of my life, yes. I don't think it's life, pero yo lo recuerdo mucho, mucho, mucho. Y lo sueño. I dream of this man at least 10 to 12 times a year. I have vivid dreams con él. No sé. When I came from New York, yo vine, I was in drugs. Yo estuve en drogas, yo estuve en prostitución en New York. Y estuve en encarcelamiento porque I come from New York to perform como maestra de ceremonia to pageants at the Bataan, with a separation of a month between the two pageants. So I come here on June 18, 1991, and the pageant was June 19. It was on a Sunday, the pageant was on a Monday at the Bataan, which was Miss Hispanidad Continental. So I stayed for a month. I performed in La Cueva because the girl that brought me, she was a friend of mine from Puerto Rico. We grew up together. And she was a diva here and a legend and an icon. And she passed away, but she still is. Miss Kitty, who does not know about Miss Kitty in our community here in Chicago, even the youth, if they didn't get to see her, they heard about her a lot, in good as well as bad. And I stayed, then a month I went to all these clubs and I work, I made that money and then I did Miss Latina Continental, which was on July. And after that pageant ended, I said to Kitty, I'm not going back to New York. She said, Niña, ¿qué tú estás hablando? What are you talking about? I said, I'm tired. I'm not going back to New York. So I called my roommate, Caracol. I said, Caracol, stay with everything. You got the keys. Just you coming back later on? But she was coming to another event in a few months after. And I said, bring me this and this and this and discount. And I said, in Chicago, boy, this is what happened. The amount of money that you get paid in Chicago at that time was not the same as New York. In New York, you get 3 or 4 or 5 times the amount for performance that you get here at that time in Chicago. So I do my first performance. I didn't ask how much I was going to pay, thinking that it was just like in New York. When I go and get paid, que me pongo la mano, y yo miro así, yo digo, I hope that when I pull up that bill, there is another one like that under. No. Me tuve que ir a robar a las tiendas. Porque at that moment ya yo tenía apartamento. With the money that I made trabajando aquí en los shows for that month, cogí un apartamento. Me junté con un mexicanito que acababa de salir de Navy después de 4 años en ese apartamentito, bien nice, con mis cuartos y todo, bien nice. Pero entonces me tuve que ir a robar a las tiendas porque de repente, what am I gonna do? A nightmare. A nightmare. It's a nightmare. You have to learn the lingo. They use a lingo, a specific lingo inside incarceration, where they call a cigarette a square. If they want to talk to you, I'm gonna fly you a kite. If they hand you something to get, does it have a string attached? So it's another world. And I have to learn it quick because I was there with these huge titties because I weighed 200 pounds. I was almost double the size that I'm now. And these big hips and this big, oh, you don't know, man, 206 pounds. I fell in love. I'm not gonna say the gang, but I met a chief. And he said, listen, I'm gonna be out in another year or so. And that was at the end of my term. And he said, and I seen transgender that you can even get close to the beautiful bodies and skin and hair. And they tried to stop by me and I said, you're parking on the right place, keep going. But there is something about you. And I said, well, there's always something about Mary, what can I say? It worked. It worked. Me protegió hasta lo último. Me respetaban porque me querían matar. Los hispanos decían that I was a disgrace to the race. Y me iban a matar. A mí me encerraron en una celda sola. Y en las celdas van 2 presos. No importa quiénes sean. Para mi seguridad me pusieron en una celda sola. No dejaba a nadie que estuviera conmigo. Como él era jefe, él logró intercambiarme de unidad para la unidad de él. Empecé a engordar más porque no se podía fumar. Y con el pelo rojo, todo rizo hasta acá. So, the last thing that I said to myself while I was incarcerated in the state, not in the state, in the county, que era DuPage County, yo dije, esto I deserve it. Yo me lo busqué. Yo me lo busqué porque yo estoy robando. Y eso es un delito. Yo no tenía one single misdemeanor, todos eran felony. Porque yo decía, si me van a dar the same amount of time, robándome una cosa de 100 pesos que una de 5,000, me llevo la de 5,000. Right? You see? My last day in incarceration for the last time in my life until today was Thursday, December 18, 1995. 7 hours from Canton, Peoria, a llegar a Chicago. Llegué por la noche. Hasta el día de hoy, jamás. En diciembre del 18 se cumplen 20, qué sé yo, ya ni me acuerdo. Más nunca empecé a trabajar. I started working with Minority Outreach Intervention Project, a Community Outreach Intervention Project. I started getting involved in outreach, in prevention, and case management for substance abusers, que it was very different at the case management that they do now, porque todo esto ha procesado, ha cambiado. Lo que yo le digo a la gente es, mira, acepta lo que tú estás haciendo. Y si tú sabes que a través de lo que se llama la sociedad por la cual tú vives y en la que tú vives está mal, acéptalo. Porque en la mayoría de las situaciones la gente no quiere aceptar lo que están haciendo. ¿Entiendes? Y al tú no aceptar, tú no aceptas, no te van a aceptar a ti tampoco. Acepta. Acéptate como tú eres. Acéptate y enséñate a ti. No esperes que nadie te lo enseñe. A menos que no tengas la capacidad de hacerlo. Y todos los seres humanos, de alguna forma u otra, tenemos la capacidad. Todos. Unos más y unos menos. Acéptate y enséñate a vivir lo que tú quieres vivir, pero correctamente. Yo no voy a condenar a quien se mete drogas porque yo me las metí. Y yo no voy a condenar al que haga nada negativo porque primero, I was a prostitute, I became a drug addict, I did heroin, crack. For you. But if you make sure that what you're doing, you will not survive it and you want to leave, think again. I'm not here to condemn you, but you can see yourself in my mirror. You see? I became from the project. Did this. And everything that I had done through my lifetime until today, I never, ever have heard any second or third person. It always has been me. ¿Te entiendes? I never had anyone. I never dragged anyone. I always did it by myself on my own. Acéptate y entiende que al igual que yo, tú también tienes ese derecho. So haz lo posible por proponértelo. Propose yourself to do something better, whether it's in a little scare or a big one. It's up to the individual. That's what I have to say.